hippies, Hollywood, and a Holocaust signed in blood by a crazed cult leader who claimed he took his orders from Satan. But was the Manson family really an underworld branch of another family?
When you owe the family something, you generally pay it.
Was Charles Manson really a mob hitman?
Do you know anything about the underworld?
And was the Sharon Tate Leno LaBianca massacre really a mafia vendetta?
If Charlie really wanted to start Helter Skelter, why did it stop?
Now it can be told, Manson and the mob.
Geraldo, here in Los Angeles, the Tate LaBianca murder case refuses to die. Investigators continue to ask important questions that remain unanswered. As Charlie Manson and family begin their third decade behind bars, now can be told has learned that the motive for these killings may have been more than Helter Skelter. The year was 1969. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll was the mantra for the nation's young. That summer, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. Thousands of hippies converged on Woodstock. And in Los Angeles, a maniacal murder machine was in motion. That August, Charles Manson led his followers through a gory rampage. The first bloodbath was at the home of actress Sharon Tate. The pregnant Tate was butchered along with jet-setter Wojtek Frykowski, his girlfriend, coffee heiress Abigail Folger, celebrity hairdresser Jay Sebring, and Stephen Parent, a friend of Tate's caretaker. The same scenario was repeated the next night at the home of grocery chain owner Leno LaBianca and his wife Rosemary.
I don't break laws. I make laws. I'm the lawmaker. I'm the one that laid the track down.
Manson and 4 members of his so-called family were arrested, convicted, and are now serving life sentences. The alleged motive was Helter Skelter, Manson's plan to begin a race war by slaughtering prominent whites and leaving clues that would blame black terrorists. This motive is now very much in question. More likely, Manson was a hired hitman.
I feel really that it was not, as Manson says, it was not a Helter Skelter thing to start a big race war.
Wojtek Frykowski and Abigail Folger were living in the Tate house for months, while Sharon Tate and her husband, film director Roman Polanski, were in Europe. Ed Sanders, author of The Family, recalls that shortly before the murders, some of the victims had been involved in unsavory activities at the Tate house.
There had been a wild party up there. There had been some sort of drug burn. They had humiliated and sodomized this drug dealer.
When the 8 months pregnant Sharon Tate returned to L.A., she was troubled by what she found at home. 2 weeks later, disaster would strike.
I know that Sharon was very concerned about something because she had called Roman that same night, and she said, "I want these people out of the house."
Shortly after midnight on August 9th, the slaughter occurred. Item: Los Angeles police initially believed the killings were drug-related. Item: Wojtek Frykowski was probably the prime target. Maury Terry, author of The Ultimate Evil, has this analysis.
Frykowski had been set up as a wholesale dealer of chemical narcotics. And the word we have is that Frykowski was a renegade, a rogue, dealing outside of the established chain of command, if you will. And as a result, they put his life in jeopardy, and they went and they hit him deliberately.
Private investigator Judy Hansen has worked on the case for years.
As far as it being a contract hit, I think that there's certain things that indicate that even at the Tate house.
Our investigation has determined that Charles Manson apparently took a contract from a local drug ring to eliminate Wojtek Frykowski. As for Sharon Tate, she just happened to be there the night Manson carried out the hit. She was an innocent victim who wasn't even supposed to be home.
She had made plans that evening to be with her friend, Sheila Wells.
She didn't need to deal drugs because she was very rich. She didn't need to engage in any kind of activity that would create this kind of hatred. So she probably got sucked into it by the cruel hand of fate.
The Sharon Tate massacre made it one down, one to go. The next hit, though, would be the main man.
His name was Leno LaBianca, and he owed the mob big time.
If they don't think they can get it back from you, hey, you're dead.
We'll be back in a moment with the untold story behind the other Manson murder and the real family plot.
So as you've seen, drugs may have been the primary motive behind the gruesome Sharon Tate killings, but it looks like stock swindling and gambling debts were the actual driving force behind the Manson family's fatal visit the next night. across town to the relatively modest home of Rosemary and Leno LaBianca. And as our investigation shows, the second part of Manson's deadly assignment probably came from the mob. Here again, Craig Rivera.
Manson's mob connections go back to his many years in prison.
Charlie had many contacts in the Los Angeles criminal underground that he had developed over the years.
In this 1988 interview with our Geraldo Rivera, Manson talked about his ties to the mob.
Do you know anything about the underworld?
I know a lot about the underworld.
You know something about the family.
I know a lot about the
But
family.
when you owe the family something, you generally pay it.
So?
There's a Holy Spirit that runs in that family.
So?
I pitched horseshoes with Frank Costello in 1952.
Manson did indeed meet mob boss Frank Costello in federal prison. Later, he met one of Costello's buddies, Frankie Carbo, at another jail. Carbo, an underworld czar, had major connections into Nevada gambling and sports betting, a significant factor in the LaBianca case.
I knew Frankie Carbo. Frankie Carbo knew Leno LaBianca.
This critical admission links Manson to the mob and the mob to the LaBianca killings. Manson also mentions a mysterious black book that he says he was told to get from LaBianca.
When Leno LaBianca got stabbed all up and all that gold and all that stuff was laying all around, the little black phone book from New York hit list was gone.
I don't think that black book contained a hit list per se. I think it was more likely a ledger of who owed what to who, and it perhaps contained some incriminating evidence that could have been very powerfully used for blackmail. And I also believe that when Manson went into that house and asked Leno about the book, that Leno, in pleading for his life, might have said that that book is in the safe up at my business, and that he was killed anyway, because we do know that before the police got to Leno's business, that safe had been opened and all of its contents were removed.
According to investigator Bill Nelson, who recently analyzed the LaBianca scene with Geraldo, Leno had serious financial troubles.
We know now that he had embezzled money for 2 years out of the grocery warehouse. He had been asked to resign by his mother and the other board members. The weekend before he was killed, he was supposed to go to a meeting and be forced to resign because of embezzlement. That meeting never took place.
Item: a fact that apparently connects LaBianca and gambling mobster Frankie Carbo's organization is that police reports state Leno LaBianca was a chronic gambler with a $500 a day habit and had personal loans of about $30,000. We have confirmed that LaBianca bet heavily at poker in Nevada, and according to Manson, high-stakes poker was part of the gambling debt.
In other words, there's a lot more to this road than you see. See?
Ed Sanders believes that LaBianca owed money to the mob, and it was payback time.
If they don't think they can get it back from you, or if by killing you they can shake it loose from family members, hey, you're dead.
Item: another link between Manson, LaBianca, and even Tate was a man named Joel Rostow, a drug dealer who delivered narcotics to the Tate house the night of the homicide. Rostow was also involved in organized crime and stock swindling.
We know that he was into stocks and commodities, and we also know that this is what Leno and Rosemary dealt in.
About 9 months after the Tate LaBianca murders, Joel Rostow was found murdered in a car trunk at Kennedy Airport in New York.
Gambling debts, drug rings, all point to mob interests. But who gave the orders? Who hired Charles Manson? Whoever it was knew the dangerous and macabre mind of Charles Manson.
I always believed that Manson was a ticking bomb, and that somebody knew that and just directed that bomb into the right residences.
If Charlie really wanted to start Helter Skelter, why did it stop? I mean, he didn't have any reason to not kill the next night or the next night or the next night. You know, and why would it stop? And it did.
Joining me now, Brother Craig. The mob motive is a plausible scenario, I think, but only if Manson desperately needed money. Did he desperately need money?
He did need money. One of his followers earlier that week got arrested for another of the Manson murders.
Was that the Gary Hinman murder, the musician? You know, one thing I found out, and I was very curious about it, one of the LaBianca kids, I think Susan, one of the daughters, wants the Manson murderers paroled, Tex Watson especially.
Right. In fact, she's lobbied for him in parole hearings, but Sharon Tate's mother, Doris Tate, is the opposite end of the spectrum.
Yeah.